know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Chris Johnston, who are you on your laptop or are you on your phone? Because you're using your phone to take a photo of what's going on. Do you do this on your phone or do it on your laptop?
This is laptop, but here's the deal: is I got a note from my dad, Coburg Papa, and he was wondering why we didn't have a Monday episode. And then I explained to him why. He gets the personal treatment. He's like, well, you should put that on Twitter, because he's like, there's more people than me that were wondering where the episode is. So yeah, I'm taking a photo so that I can tweet to let everyone know we're going to drop on Tuesday today. I know you've sent out yesterday, Julian, but I guess, maybe Coburg Papa didn't miss the memo.
Here's the thing. Like, I'm not sure if you realize this, but you have a much wider reach online than I do. So I understand Coburg Papa's point.
Well, I know he follows you, so that's not the issue. He just probably missed it. He doesn't live as online as like everybody else does these days,
Probably has other things to do, like get ready for the Stanley Cup Final, like so many other millions of hockey fans are, like we are this week. Do you remember actually when we did our season prediction show, who you wanted in the Stanley Cup Final? You didn't give a full matchup, but you did give one team.
Really? I do not remember.
We both said the Colorado Avalanche would make the Stanley Cup Final. My matchup was Colorado against the New York Islanders.
Well, 1-2 ain't bad.
Yeah, well, not so bad. Yeah, we were very big on how this had to be the year for Nathan MacKinnon. It still could very well be the year for Nathan MacKinnon. I mean, this year could mean everything to him.
Well, win or lose, it's still the year. I mean, obviously he wants to win, but they've done what they're supposed to do. Like, there would be no shame. Like, I don't know why maybe an Avalanche fan will just bristle at this suggestion. I don't think there'd be any shame at this stage if they lost in this series. Especially if it went down, if it's 6 or 7 games and you lose to a team winning for the third straight year. I mean, there's going to be regret about that always, because it's a missed opportunity of something special. I noted when Bruce Cassidy did his media, he said that what's the one thing he thinks about the most from the Bruins. He said Game 7, 2019, because the Bruins didn't win it in the Cup Final. So like the stakes are high, but I think all things considered, the way they've roared through these playoffs, the way they performed through the regular season, the Avalanche have been what they've met the expectations, put it that way. Now it's gravy if they can go lift the thing.
I guess, but the thing is, it's very rare. What Tampa Bay is doing is extremely rare in the National Hockey League. It's one thing to go to the Stanley Cup. It's a whole other thing to go to the Stanley Cup 3 consecutive years. And if I'm an Avalanche fan, I'm maybe not bristle at the idea that, like, if you lose, maybe you still met expectations. But I'm living in fear at the fact that the Avalanche might not ever reach that peak again. Like, what if something happens and they don't come back the year after? What if it comes time for signing all of these players and signing Nathan MacKinnon, and you're not able to craft a team that is good enough to go back to the Stanley Cup Final? That's me being extremely paranoid, but I don't think I'd be the only person, if I were an Avalanche fan, thinking this.
Well, I think, okay, sorry, I'm just finishing this tweet. I'm not trying to be rude.
No, that's totally
for anyone
fine.
watching on YouTube. Like, why is he not even looking up?
I figured you're either writing a tweet or you are breaking some news story. You are allowed to do that as long as it is for the greater good of the show.
I've got to be a good son. My dad doesn't ask for much. If he's asking for a tweet, I want to give him a tweet.
Do what you got to do. See,
to your earlier point, I think it would be wise for any team that's ever in a Stanley Cup Final, under any circumstances, young, old, whatever, to believe it could be their last chance. The Lightning might be conditioning us or into thinking that this will be normal, or like we might watch 20 more Stanley Cup Finals and not see this. We might not see anyone get back-to-back years even. Like the way the system is set up in the NHL is to erode your talent base. It's to make it hard to keep a team together. It's searching for parity. I know it doesn't always do so, but that's literally, in my view, how they've structured the league. And now with there's 32 teams, I mean, obviously there will be teams that remain good year after year after year, But Washington's been good year after year after year after year after year, and they've been in one cup final. Unfortunately for them, they won the thing in 2018. Right? But like, I'm thinking like any team that gets there should approach it like this could be it. And I actually think the Lightning are viewing it that way too. Like I still think they're going to be good, but they're probably losing Andre Palat this summer, who's been a huge sort of one of their second tier guys, but he's been a steady, constant presence there for years. You just don't know. Everyone gets a year older. I mean, you still got Andre Vasilevsky. I'm not predicting the Lightning are going to fall off a cliff, but you just never know if this is even their last shot. So, do you know what's better than winning 2? Putting a 3rd ring on that finger, brother. And so I think the Avalanche should have a lot to play for, but the Lightning also have a lot to play for. That's what makes it so compelling.
We're going to have a lot of thoughts on who we think is going to win this series and just all these other different, elements for each team. I'd like for us at one point to make arguments for why Tampa will win or why Colorado will win. And there's a whole bunch of other news and notes we want to get to, but of course we got to get to sports interaction. But before we do that, one final question before we bring on David Bastel. Is there a storyline in this Stanley Cup Final, Colorado versus Tampa Bay, that you're interested in the most? It could be the most obvious thing. It could be something that not as many people are talking about. But is there one storyline, CJ, that you are interested in the most when it comes to this Cup Final?
It's kind of the Corey Perry thing, honestly. And, Corey Perry's basically been in the NHL the entire time I've been a reporter in the league. Like we kind of overlap time frames. And so maybe I'm, just more interested in his career because I've sort of dealt with him a lot over the years. But first of all, he won a cup in 2007 when he was a young player. And then now to be in his 3rd straight cup final, in which he lost to Tampa the last 2 years and then joined the Blue and White Express trying to get that cup and to be there. I think that's kind of a cool one. I sort of like the old guy storylines, right? We talked about Ray Bourque, I know, on a recent episode and him finally winning a cup with the Avs. I think Corey Perry has got to be it. I mean, Patrick Maroon, it's just like mind-blowing. This guy's been part of 15 straight series victories, especially being the kind of player he is. Like what a run he's been on. Like we should take him to Vegas if he gets a 4th straight cup. Like we just want to stand near that man and like feed off the energy or what have you. So, those are 2 that jump to mind. I mean, hopefully Andrew Cogliano gets to play in the series. He sort of fits a similar build to Corey Perry. I mean, at one point was on his way to maybe being an NHL Ironman, has been in the league forever. He was part of the Stars team that lost to Tampa as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, I'm a sucker for the older players trying to get their cup because obviously for them, it's not just that on any given year a team might fall off. I mean, they're just down to not a lot of time left in their careers. They're well on the back 9 now and trying to get it done before they got to join us in the medium ranks.
I am into the Nathan MacKinnon, opportunity, the attempt at him finally being a champion. Him saying last year that he's been in the league as long as he's been in the league and he hasn't won shit. He's been fueled by that for so long. And now he has the opportunity to win the Stanley Cup. I've been on record saying the worst hockey take I've ever made in my life was that Jonathan Drouin would be a better player than Nathan MacKinnon was in his draft year. I will own that for the rest of my life. And I am so happy I am wrong because we are looking at a player who has the strength, size, speed, like a bull in a china shop. And he has vaulted himself into the top 3 players in the National Hockey League. And if he wins that damn Stanley Cup, it will be one of the coolest things just because of the will and determination he's put himself through. He will enjoy all the In-N-Out burgers he wants to after the fact. But I am really into this Nathan MacKinnon storyline. That's my pick.
Great choice. And let me take you to a moment. I literally will never forget this.
Yes. 2nd
floor conference room, JW Marriott at the LA Live, 2017 All-Star game. And they roll out, they bring players to the pods and it's the All-Star weekend. There's not usually it's not like guys are getting grilled there, if you know what I'm saying. And Nathan MacKinnon's there and it's a morning availability. And I just remember he starts off by going, I bet you're surprised to see a member of the Avalanche here. I'm like, what is this? And that was the year. I should have looked this up before the pod, but that again, we won't let facts get in the way. These are rough estimates because I didn't even go back and read his quotes, but I just remember he was opened his soul because the Avs were on the way to a terrible finish that season. he was saying like he didn't feel like he deserved to be at an all-star game, that no one from the organization could recognize. Like this guy wears things hard, right? And he's been in the league a long time, and he's still a younger player in a sense. Like I still forecast a number of good years for Nathan MacKinnon in the future, but he's sweat for this. He's seen as, a guy who's become a good friend of his, Sidney Crosby, a great friend actually, bring the cup home to Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia 3 times. Now he's got a chance to do the same. Although I know that those two kid each other, but whether Nathan MacKinnon actually lived in Cole Harbour or just a little bit over the town line. But it would be a cool story for him, given what he's been through. I think this is why the cup is special to me, Julian, is like, it's hard to play in this league. Like as much as it's great to be an NHL player, like guys have to endure a lot. Losing is difficult. There's personal injuries, there's ups and downs. I mean, even Nathan MacKinnon early in his career as a first overall pick, maybe didn't pop the way he wanted to pop or the way people expected him to. And it took him a little bit of time to become this superstar that's before us today. And so, yeah, if it comes to be the fact that it's, Gabe Landeskog taking that cup and handing it to MacKinnon, that'll be, I think, an iconic type of moment. And so your storyline's probably a little sexier than mine. I'm just sticking with the old fourth liners and watching them try to grind out a cup too.
Yeah, but your storyline is like, I'm going for the obvious storyline. You're going for the one less talked about, which could still turn into a gem of a storyline. Like that's totally fine as well.
Well, look, to me, sports ultimately about people in the end. Like, obviously I love the sporting achievement. I can celebrate that. I can appreciate to a certain degree the X's and O's, but, I don't come from a background where my level of understanding is that, but I love the human stories. And so, what's great actually though, is that Nathan MacKinnon is a great hockey story, but he's a great human story too. And so, that's why I like your suggestion maybe a little bit better now that I've had some more time to ruminate on it.
Just gonna do like a little suggestion here at this point before we bring on David Bastel. I would love nothing more than 1 year for us to just do episodes of this podcast at the Stanley Cup Final. Like we're both credentialed for the final and we're just there just to do the podcast. And we can get some of those human stories, be doing the media day and then bringing it up on future episodes. How about that?
I like where you're manifesting things, bud. We're just getting started here. Season 1 is winding down, but there's going to be a season 2. We know that much.
Oh, we know that much. And hopefully before the end of season 1, we will know what Jeff Carter's middle name is. Okay, time to bring on David Bastel from Sports Interaction. As always, this is 19 plus. We ask that you play responsibly, and there is a link to responsible gaming strategies in the description of this show. Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. David, I learned on the Steve Dangle podcast that this Stanley Cup Final is the first Stanley Cup Final featuring teams whose names do not end with the letter S. Do you happen to know the odds on that?
Geez. I was going to say, wow. Well, it's plus money. Plus a billion. I don't. But you know what's really funny, though? At the beginning of the year, these two teams were in the top 3 to actually win the Stanley Cup. So as far as predictions are concerned and no value Stanley Cup, this would be the no value Stanley Cup for sure when you look at it. And you know what? That means it's going to be an excellent Stanley Cup. And I look forward to hopefully 7 games.
Well, the CJ show, we're still sitting on our Panthers future Stanley Cup bet.
Let it go.
My Flames one was crossed a long time ago.
I've already accepted the fact that I'm not getting a steak dinner as a result. David, please tell us the series odds.
Yeah, right now, you know what? No surprise. Colorado favorites at Sports Interaction. You can get them at plus or make that 1 decimal. Sorry, I go American so often. 1.50. Tampa Bay. Some value there at 247 for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know about you guys, but have you guys done your picks? Because I'm kind of curious to see where this goes and if you're tempted by the 2-time Stanley Cup champs.
I did Lightning in 6. I think that I can understand it. Look, we all see how Colorado skates, how they're basically skating everyone into submission. They're scoring at a crazy pace in these playoffs. But I think the fact that Brayden Point's re-entering the series with Nazem Kadri likely to be unavailable for the Avalanche, the goaltending as it is. And, I put a little stock in experience and Tampa showed me a lot in these playoffs. I just wondered if they were going to have the juice to like want to do it again, like, because it's so hard to win.
It is.
They've answered every question to this point, and so I think the Lightning are going to pull this one off.
I feel like I have to be consistent and remain with the Colorado Avalanche because I said they'd be in the final from the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the postseason, they had everyone from the SDPN put together these brackets, and I said the Colorado Avalanche would make it. And I obviously like the Nathan MacKinnon story. I love the speed that they have, the strength that they have. They have depth throughout all four of their forward lines, even though they've endured so many injuries throughout the postseason. The goaltending is very much a question mark. Yep. And I mean, it would be for any team if you're going up against Andrei Vasilevsky. The one thing that maybe the Avs, I think, and I'm kind of hoping in this case would work for them, we've seen the Lightning as good as they've been. They've had some slow starts to their series. And if there's one team that can bury a team when they have the opportunity, it's the Colorado Avalanche. So I think I'm going to say Avalanche in 7, maybe just to be consistent. And I'm probably going to regret it by the end of this series, but I would say Avalanche in 7.
That's pretty good. And you know what? It's funny you say that because the Lightning have kind of struggled in those first games of series, except that Florida series, of course. But the Lightning 5-1 in their last 6 games in Denver. So they have had some success there as far as against the number. But you know what? They do not meet that often anyway. So it's hard to actually sit there and go, okay, this is a firm stat that we're going to go with. So
all we know is they can handle the altitude.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. What about the number of shutouts in this series?
You know what? It's interesting. I gave you guys this because I thought, you know what? Most people would sit there and go, okay, none would be your best bet. But your best bet is actually 1, the lowest odds and the favorite to actually be. And it doesn't matter who gets it. It's a Colorado goaltending or Andrei Vasilevsky, because I know that, we're only going to see number 88. So 2.45 for 1 shutout, no shutouts in the series, some value there at a 350. So 3.5 times your money. If nobody pitches a shutout in this series, I'm almost circling that, going, you know what? I know Vasilevsky's so good and he kind of turns it up in this kind of series, but man, Colorado to be shut down completely. CJ, can you actually see that type of offense go no goals in one of the games?
I can't see that.
I can't either. I mean, as long as they're still allowed to call penalties in this series and there's a few power plays, but even at 5-on-5, I mean, they're just so fast in transition. Like they're going to get their chances, right? There's going to be an odd man rush or two a game, no matter what the Lightning do. It's just part of how the Avalanche take some chances. The fact they take some of those chances too lends to, chances going the other way occasionally if they turn the puck over. And so I'm with you. I actually can't really envision a shutout in this series, even as good as all 3 goaltenders really have been when they've been in the net this playoffs. And so I might be inclined to go with your 0 pick there.
Okay, last one for you, David. Who will lead the series in points?
Well, it's funny because this opened up as a dead tie between Kucherov and MacKinnon, but money coming in on Nikita Kucherov. He's actually the clubhouse leader right now as we enter game number 1 on Wednesday night. So you look at the standings too. You go Kucherov number 1, MacKinnon number 2. Then there's a little bit of value in Cal McCarr, Rantanen, Stamkos. I don't know about you. It's not the type of series that I'll go off the board and pick in the top 5, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm circling Nathan MacKinnon, but Kucherov right now accepting a lot of cash, CJ.
Ooh, I might be inclined to go McCarr. I know he's the position he plays, but just how much he plays and how much offense tends to be going the other way in the right favor of the Avalanche when he's on the ice. I think that might be my sneaky little pick there. Cheeky one.
Yep, number 3.
I got to say with Nikita Kucherov, a lot of love going Andrei Vasilevsky's way for the Conn Smythe. I think the last time we were talking about it, I think there was actually a lot of love for Kucherov, but I don't feel as if I've seen enough of that a lot. And if Kucherov finds a way to lead the series in points, like that would kind of cap off, speaking of sneaky, one of the more sneakier postseasons for Nikita Kucherov, who did not necessarily have a great starting in that Leaf series. And he just picked it up in that Florida Panthers series, and he's just been the dynamo we expected him to be ever since. So maybe you go for Nikita Kucherov. I like the Kyle McCarr play, though. Another keeping with the theme of being sneaky. I think Kyle McCarr could find himself in a position where he gets himself a lot of points. Nathan MacKinnon, he's a bad man for a reason, David Bastel.
It should be a lot of fun. Let's hope this lives up to expectation like it sure appears to on paper.
That's what I'm hoping for as well. David, thank you so much for joining us here on You Can Bet That. Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. Again, sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. We'll see you soon, David Bastel.
Take care.
So, Siege, we didn't plan this before we got into the segment with David Bastel, but it appears we are picking different teams to win this year's Stanley Cup Final. I love it. I like this. This is fun.
I like being on a different side of a bet from you because it's good to know one of us will win, but more importantly, that one of us will be wrong.
Oh man, I wonder who that person will end up being. So what I envisioned for this part of the show is that, we discuss reasons why both Tampa and Colorado could win the Stanley Cup, and essentially as a bit of a preview here. So it's kind of funny that, you'll have your arguments for why Tampa will win, and I'll come up with stuff for why Colorado will win, but we can, go into it for both teams. So why not start with Tampa, or unless you had another point you want to make?
I just wanted to add quickly, one of the coolest things that goes on before every Stanley Cup final, there's a Swedish writer named Per Bjurman from the Aftonbladet news group. And he goes right across the hockey world and gets picks. Like he gets over 200 people that will respond, including active NHL players, agents, obviously media people, the whole bit. And I haven't seen the outcome yet. I know he's got more than 200 responses, but I picked the Lightning there. And so that was the first place I had to make a pick. And so that's why I'm sticking with the Lightning. Just letting you know that. But honestly, I would encourage, I'll retweet it when it comes out, but I would encourage everyone to use Google Translate and read that, because it's so cool to see like Nicholas Lidstrom and Matt Sundin and all these Swedish legends like actually going on record and picking one team or another and giving a reason why. That
sounds like an awesome idea. So please retweet that and I'll make sure to read that. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat here. Like I've had to pick I picked the Colorado Avalanche to do damage throughout most of this year, especially at the beginning of this postseason. And as engaging as awesome as the Tampa Bay Lightning look, I feel like I would be betraying myself if I went against them. So it's really out of consistency why I'm picking Colorado. But I mean, it's not like I'm picking some really small underdog here. We're talking about the Colorado Avalanche, one of the more fearsome teams to play against in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's just the Tampa Bay Lightning have just woken up and they've turned themselves into the machine that we expect. Like it's scary how good they look right now.
Well, and what I don't think Tampa gets enough love for, or hasn't got enough love for through this run of two straight cups and now a chance to play for a third, is that they can really shut the game down. And Vasilevsky's awesome. I'm not taking anything away from his ability, his skill, but I think when the Lightning are playing their best, like they block a lot of shots, they protect that area in front of him, and they don't tend to give up crazy numbers of high danger chances. Now, there have been exceptions in this playoffs, and I think it's relevant when we're analyzing what the series might do, because the Maple Leafs in round one pushed Tampa right to the brink, and I think one of the ways they did it is by using their team speed. Colorado might be the fastest team on the planet, and so you would think there might be a recipe in there. And what the Leafs did generate is some odd man rushes and breakaway opportunities. Vasilevsky actually stopped a number of breakaways in that series, but Toronto put a lot of pucks behind him, 24 in a 7-game series, much more than you would have expected. And so, to me, that's kind of the fulcrum of where this could be decided is Tampa able to shut things down the way they have so often in the past and limit those chances, or will Colorado just be too much to contain? I really sort of fundamentally believe, that's the area where this will be decided, where one team will gain an edge or the other. But, I'm picking the Lightning mostly because I've just seen them really clamp down, really focus, and make it difficult to score against them. And when they have a goalie like Vasilevsky, they don't need to score that much to win. They won Game 7 against the Leafs 2-1. They won a Game 7 last year against the Islanders 1-0. As much as they have gifted offensive players, the Lightning haven't outscored their problems the way maybe a team like Colorado can, if they have any problems. We saw Colorado win 6-5 game or 8-6 game against Edmonton. I think Tampa's far more likely to win 2-1, 3-2. And I think that will ultimately give them a slight edge in this final.
And an argument for Tampa, the goaltender they're going to likely go up against, obviously nowhere near the caliber of an Andrei Vasilevsky, not even near the caliber of an Igor Shesterkin. The goaltending matchup is going to be very interesting to follow because everyone expects Andrei Vasilevsky to be the guy. But I kind of envision a situation where if Darcy Kemper, if he's still feeling, iffy, Pavel Francouz could go in, right? Like there's a lot of question marks, I think, with this goalie matchup on the side of the Colorado Avalanche, and so much is going to be put on them to deliver and try to rise up to the level of Andrei Vasilevsky. Good luck with that.
Right. Well, the one thing though is Francouz and Kemper both have put up great numbers as NHL goalies. We just haven't seen them on the stage. Like they haven't been under this microscope, this spotlight, and so that's why it feels a little less certain. Whereas the stats about Vasilevsky and closeout games. Last year in the Cup Final was just impossible for Montreal to score on basically. Mm-hmm. I think that's where the difference is. But to me, they're not bad goalies. They're certainly not neither of them is a better goalie clearly than Vasilevsky. But the beautiful thing about sports and this Cup Final is it's going to be played over 8 to 10 to 14 days. They one or both those guys might be better than Vasilevsky over a 2-week period. It certainly could happen, and that's where this series will be decided. And so I don't think Colorado gives up as much here as we might be inclined to say. But they don't. Neither of those guys has the same kind of presence as Vasilevsky. Like I think Vasilevsky, he's just so big, and the way he moves around the net like a cat, like he gets in a shooter's mind before they've even taken the shot. It was like Carey Price at his best. I think that was a thing. It's just if you were shooting on him, you just felt like there was nowhere you were ever going to beat him. And so there's almost a psychological thing at play that won't be in the minds of the Lightning in quite the same way whether they're shooting on Kemper or Francouz in the series.
As of right now, as we're recording, so it's entirely possible you might hear different news by the time this episode comes out. But as of right now, we do not know if Nazem Kadri or Brayden Point will show up in Game 1 of this Stanley Cup Final series. It remains to be seen when Nazem Kadri will be back, where John Cooper is saying it's extremely probable we could be seeing Brayden Point in this Stanley Cup Final series. Does this not feel like a race between both teams to kind of figure out which injured center returns to the lineup first?
It might be, but the problem for Colorado is that the Lightning are winning the race. I mean, if only just because Brayden Point's had more time to recover. Nazem Kadri's only 10 days since he had surgery on his thumb. What I've heard on Kadri is that it's not completely impossible he plays in the Cup Final, but you're looking at if it goes sort of 6-7 games. So June 26th, June 28th, give him another couple weeks here to get back to health. Be able to grip a stick, when you have surgery on your hand. I mean, just controlling the stick is an important thing. And obviously for someone who takes faceoffs, who scores goals the way Kadri does, even who sets up plays, like that's pretty key to what he does in terms of being effective. I would think we're going to see Brayden Point in Game 1, not just in the series. And so that could be a huge sort of turning point. One team likely to be without its an impactful center, another getting one back. That tends to go in Tampa's favor, but we also have to see sort of what percentage Point is playing. I think that if he feels he can go, it makes sense to put him in. Basically, at any version of him is better than probably who is replacing him in the lineup. He's just that good. He's that competitive of a guy. As much as we can rave, you can go back and look at his goal totals the last couple of playoffs. Like to me, where he makes a difference is he just doesn't take a shift off. He hounds the puck. He's a little nasty, even though he's not a big guy. I mean that as a compliment in the scope of playoff hockey. Like you're out there against him when you're playing him, and he's just unafraid to drive through the middle of the ice. And so I don't know if he'll be skating at full pop, given the area of his body he clearly suffered an injury in was lower body injury. But I still think just what he brings to the team, his mindset, his attitude. I mean, think back to that Game 7 against Toronto, Julian, when he got injured, and he still sat there on the bench. He tried like a 20-second shift to start the second period, couldn't do it. He almost was like in tears on the bench. He saw his teammates come over to like pat him on the back, but he like sat there like with his guys. Like I just think he's in the fight with the Lightning. I think a lot of the Lightning's success, maybe their secret sauce, is they're sort of all there's a collective will among that group that's special. I mean, obviously they have skill. They have top players at every position. Those guys can break games open, and that's why they've won. But I think they've won because of how they are as a team. Ultimately, that's given them a little bit extra in those tough moments, and I think Brayden Point gives them a lot extra as they enter a series like this one.
So, moving on from Brayden Point to your Conn Smythe Trophy pick. Do you have a Conn Smythe Trophy pick?
Well, I can't possibly make one until I know. I mean, it might be Connor McDavid at this point.
Oh, you're not gonna try to do the prediction thing and be like, oh, here's who I think is gonna win. But wait, you mentioned Connor McDavid. Do you think there's like a stone's throw chance that even after this series goes, he could still win it?
I don't know, but I mean, if we're making it based on the first 3 rounds in totality, you could make an argument that he was the best player, the MVP of the playoffs. But his team didn't win the 3rd round. I certainly don't put that on his shoulders alone or anything like that. But we should actually maybe think about this. I believe I have a Conn Smythe vote, and so I don't know that I can even probably share what I'm thinking as the series goes along. But we'll have to think on that.
Very fair.
Mostly just because I don't want to betray anything. I don't want to like move the odds of, there's not that many people vote on that trophy each year. I think I've had a vote every year since 2013 on the Conn Smythe Trophy. It's the scariest thing. I mean, it's so important. You actually vote in the middle of the 3rd period, anytime the cup can be won.
Really?
Yeah. So like if, let's say one team is up 3-1 in the series, game 5, midway through the 3rd period, you have to vote no matter what the score is, just in case it ends, because they give it out on the ice right after, right? So I probably will have to take a knee on sharing Conn Smythe thoughts, mostly because I don't want to influence the voting of the other voters, or, I don't want to do anything. I'll obviously tell you after the fact who I voted for and explain why, but I think maybe I should keep that to myself too.
We should also, on that note, when all the NHL awards are awarded, it would be cool if we could also kind of do something similar with your ballots, even though they are kind of public for at least most of the awards, as far as I've seen. But it could be something we could think about once all the different awards are out.
Maybe a week from Thursday's show, because the awards are going to be handed out during the Cup Final on Tuesday, the 21st, I believe it is. So we could, by that Thursday, we'll know if, who won the Hart, who won the Norris and the major awards, and we can go through kind of my thinking there.
I love the fact that like sometimes we'll just have like a break in the episode, just be like, hey, do you want to do this for this episode? Do you want to do this?
Well, life's busy. We don't have time to always think about it, but then the ideas pop up when we're talking, right? So you get to see how the sausage is made if you're a fan of the CJ show, because we just tell you exactly where we show our process and our results at the same time.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with letting people know about the different production notes that get passed around during a show. Anyway, for the Stanley Cup Final, I have Colorado in 7. You have the Lightning in 6. I don't know if we want to make this any more sweeter. If we could just go off bragging rights for this, I'm good with that. But I'm cool with just bragging rights.
Yeah, if you have any funny ideas, like the mayors that make bets, and
yeah,
if you have any funny ideas, I'm willing to do a playful bet. But we can also ruminate on it, because our picks are locked in. We're not changing the picks no matter what happens in Game 1 Wednesday. So when we're back with you Thursday, maybe we'll have the terms of the bet laid out. But Julian's locked in on the Lightning, the Avalanche, and I'm locked in on the Lightning no matter what.
Exactly. All right. So there's a few other news and notes I want to get to. We don't have to spend a long amount of time on each of them, but I kind of just want your takes on some of these different stories that have popped up in the last few days. I'll start in Anaheim, because a report kind of went out there from a friend of the show, Nick Alberga, that John Gibson may very well want out of Anaheim. He's a goaltender who a lot of people were speculating over his future this offseason, and now it looks as if he may be trying to force the issue. What did you think of the report that was out there? What do you think of John Gibson in Anaheim and his future going forward?
Well, I'd say no one should be surprised that his name's out there. I mean, his name was out there to some degree last summer. I think Anaheim at least gauge where the market might be on it. And look what's happened in the 12 months since that time. They have a new general manager, Pat Verbeek. So a new GM tends to bring a new direction and have a plan. And Pat Verbeek's plan isn't to win the cup next season. It's to build the Ducks back up to a spot where they have a chance to win it every year. And look what he did at the trade deadline. He had Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson, and Rickard Rakell, all his pending UFAs. He did have some contract extension talks with those players' agents, and ultimately moved all 3 for futures. So the direction that we've seen from the new GM is to ship out older guys that have value and to start turning things over within the organization. And so I think all of that points to at least seeing what you might get for Gibson. What's unique about goaltenders is they don't tend to, if you look historically, they don't tend to get you a lot on the trade market. And so I don't know that it's a slam dunk he's traded or anything like that. But, in an offseason like this one, where you've had the lack of success, I'll call it, the Ducks have had the last few years, I think it only would make sense to see what you might get for a player like Gibson. And so I think that's my read on where things are at. I won't say 100% he's going to be moved, but, having a conversation, there's no harm in that. It happens all the time around the league. Like what might it take to get player X off your team? One GM says to another, they play that hypothetical game all the time. And, it's also a year where we don't have maybe a lot of marquee goaltenders on the free agent market. You basically have some version of Darcy Kemper, Jack Campbell, Marc-Andre Fleury, Ville Husso coming off a good year in St. Louis, but it hasn't shown it over a number of seasons. This is really the first year he got to play a meaningful number of games in the NHL. And so if teams either strike out on those players or don't like those players, they're going to look to the trade market to bolster themselves with the position. And I think Gibson would be a great target for them. And I do think Anaheim's willing to listen.
Modified no trade clause, cap it of 6.4 mil through 2027, 28 years old, a guy in his prime. I have to wonder if you are a team desperate for goaltending, or if you happen to be a team that thinks it's not worth shelling out money for a goaltender and deciding, we need another option out there. There may be a specific team I am trying to describe with that description, as bad as it might sound. But I have to imagine that there are teams who would be kicking down the door to try to get a guy like John Gibson.
Well, before we go any further, I don't believe the Maple Leafs are interested here. I don't think they're involved in this process. So I don't know if that's the team you're hinting at. I live in Toronto, so I know a lot of people locally have been hinting at that or talking about it on the radio. I for one reason or another, I don't see the Leafs as a likely destination if he's moved. But the Leafs have been keeping things pretty close to the vest. They've made a change by not renewing their goaltending coach, Steve Briere. And so the conditions are there that I see, that they're going to revamp their whole goaltending department at a coaching and organizational level. And I think that's very possible they're going to have 2 new goaltenders at the NHL level next season. And so there's some big decisions to be made. But based on what I've heard, it doesn't sound like Gibson is a target they have in mind.
Shout out to you breaking the Steve Briere story, by the way. That was you, right?
It was, yeah.
Pat yourself on the back, brother. It's always good to have some of those breaking stories. I know it's your job, but it's okay to, pat yourself on the back.
You got to stay humble, man, because that it's so hard to do it with any story. So you just know that it's a lot of things got to come together sometimes to make it happen. I mean, the teams are trying to break their own news. Obviously, there's a lot of other great journalists out there around the league talking to GMs and agents. And, anyway, it's nice when it happens, but got to stay humble. It's going to be busy next few weeks.
As the sun comes out and small businesses are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people you want to interview faster and for free. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then just add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. In fact, did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Johnston. That's linkedin.com/Johnston to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, our next partner is a pretty cool product. Let's talk about Athletic Greens. If you're looking to get better gut health, more energy, or a stronger immune system in a really easy, natural way, you've got to check out Athletic Greens. I'm sure you'll all agree that most of us are not huge fans of having to take a bunch of pills or vitamins in the morning. But with Athletic Greens, you can get rid of all those extra vitamin bottles and finally make some room in your cabinet. Athletic Greens is an all-in-one solution that actually tastes good. You'll really enjoy actually getting your daily vitamins in through them. What is this stuff actually? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and even aging. All of the things. Like that's pretty cool. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, daily free, or gluten free, and contains less than 1 gram of sugar. No GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything, while still tasting good. It will cost you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. So you don't have to go out to the store, go to Starbucks all the time. Invest in some Athletic Greens. It has over 7,000 5-star reviews, recommended by professional athletes and trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Johnston. athleticgreens.com/Johnston to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. It sure will be with the free agents, the drafts, and where all these coaches are going to go. Your former employer put up a really nice graphic of coaching candidates and possible destinations. And I know Frank Saravalli has been all over this as well. But Barry Trotz, Bruce Cassidy, who we talked about in our last episode, Jim Montgomery, Peter DeBoer, John Tortorella, Rick Tocchet, among the many coaches looking for a job this coming off season. Have you got any reads on where some of these coaches might end up going?
Well, let's go big picture. I think what held up the coaching searches initially was Barry Trotz, hasn't been in a hurry to make his decision. Like, he's got a lot of family stuff going on. Obviously, it was a difficult year on the island for him, and he's got options. I don't even know that he has to coach this year. I would expect he's going to, but he was taking time with his own process, and I think that slowed it down because a few teams were interested in him. Then a week ago, Bruce Cassidy gets fired somewhat surprisingly by the Bruins. And I do know there are teams out there that view Cassidy above Trotz if they could choose, they could just have any pick of who they want. And so that shifted the dynamic as well, because no longer is it just Trotz watch. Now you got Cassidy involved. And then because there's right now, as we're recording this, 9 openings around the league, which is insane at the head job. I'm counting Edmonton and Florida in that, who finished the year with interim coaches, who are likely to stay. But, at this point, as we're recording, they haven't been confirmed as a full-time head coach. There's still technically 9 openings around the league. There's a lot of crossover there. And so more than one team has interviewed John Tortorella. More than one team has interviewed Rick Tocchet. And so my view of what's going to happen here is that somebody, don't forget Pete DeBoer either, let go in Vegas, right, and has a strong track record. I would expect that we're going to see him somewhere next season behind the bench. So I think that once 1 or 2 hirings happen and sort of names come off the board, that there will be a domino effect. I do think it's going to happen quickly. I mean, ideally, the league doesn't like news to come out during the Stanley Cup Final, but it's a 24/7 industry world these days. I think some of these coaches will actually ultimately be hired during the Cup Final, and then you'll see a wave of them before July 7th when we're in Montreal for the draft. And so, it's getting closer, but there's so many different moving pieces and dynamics that it'll be very interesting to see, first of all, where Cassidy lands, and second, where Trotz lands, because those guys will have their pick of multiple jobs. And then all the teams that sort of finish second or third trying to get those guys, we're going to have to pivot and go in other directions.
I still think a team like Detroit, I have literally the graphic from that Sportsnet segment on 32 Thoughts in front of me about where some of these coaches could go and some of the teams that they're associated with. I still feel there's a team in there like Detroit. I have this weird feeling that Detroit's going to go off the board and not take any of those guys that are listed. I've been trying to ship Benoit Groulx from the Syracuse Crunch to Detroit, just the natural connection with Yzerman working in the Lightning front office and Groulx being one of the better coaches in the AHL. I've been trying to ship that, and I don't have any intel on that. That's just something I just kind of see happening, because I don't know. Sometimes you think things are going to go a certain way, but they don't always do it. And in this case, Detroit in this graphic is linked to Barry Trotz and Bruce Cassidy. And there's a very good possibility that both those coaches end up going elsewhere. That's just my gut feeling. And then Torts probably to Philly. Rick Tocchet is a very interesting wild card in this. I know he continues to get jobs. I could still see him going back to TNT next year if things don't necessarily work out the way that he might want to. And then Pete DeBoer might end up going to Dallas. Who knows? Jim Montgomery is also a really interesting name as well. Guy been out of the league. I'm intrigued at some of these names that are out there, but I just have this gut feeling it's not going to go as straightforward as we all think it might.
No, and I think your read on Detroit's correct. Like I've spoken to quite a few people involved in these interviews and trying to get a sense of basically where the market is. And I've heard consistently that like Steve Yzerman really keeping his cards close to the vest, not really tipping his hand even when he speaks to candidates or, some of the agents that handle the coaches about which way he's leaning. And, look, I think that was a mark of what helped make the Lightning organization so strong when Yzerman was at the head of it from a hockey ops standpoint, was that they did things their own way. They weren't following whatever was popular in the moment or which way the wind was blowing, that they had a clear idea of what kind of players they wanted to get and how they were going to do it. And they did that to great success. And so I agree that if any team is sort of, if we want to say going off the board here and hiring someone that everyone goes, what? I think Detroit is most likely of the 9 total openings right now to do something maybe that's a little unexpected or not being rumored or speculated about in the media.
Let's move on to the Edmonton Oilers, because there seems to be some discussion going around about Duncan Keith's future. And I want to read out this tweet from your boys at Puckpedia. If Duncan Keith retired this summer, his $5.5 million cap hit would be removed for the Edmonton Oilers, and they would actually get a $3.4 million recapture cap credit. So like a negative cap hit. The Blackhawks would have $7.5 million of recapture cap hit allocated as 5.5 for next season and $2 million for the year after that. And then after that, there seems to be a report going around from Bob Stauffer, who works with Oilers now, saying that the NHL's current position is that teams should not receive recapture cap credit benefit, even though it is outlined essentially in the CBA. And my colleague at The Athletic, Daniel Nugent-Bowman, says he's heard whispers of this as well. What's your read on this Duncan Keith situation? And I had no idea, or maybe I should have remembered this and I just didn't realize it, that a recapture cap credit like existed.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. If you, I'm trying to remember. I can picture the player. Unfortunately, who was a defenseman who got traded from Ottawa to Toronto, had hip issues, and then the Leafs bought him out. Had hip injuries. Unfortunately, his career, Jared Cowan.
Oh,
Jared Cowan. And so, and the Leafs traded for his rights and bought him out, and actually got a cap recapture credit for doing so. And so, look, at the cap recapture rule is very controversial. Just a quick little annotated history is that, in the early days of after the cap was brought in, a lot of players were signing contracts like Duncan Keith has, like Shea Weber has, like Sidney Crosby has, where there were years tacked on at the end of long-term deals that brought down the overall cap hit, because they were like, I think Crosby the next 3 seasons is getting paid like $3 million a year, even though his cap hit will continue to be $8.7 million. And so basically the league took moves in the 2013 CBA to eliminate what you might call a loophole by, first of all, limiting player contracts to be no longer than 7 years if you sign with someone else, 8 years with your own team, but also introducing a cap recapture penalty if those players that were signed prior to between 2005 and 2013 to these long-term deals retired early. And so in addition to there being a penalty if you received a benefit, there is a credit in a case where the team was charged too much cap hit. And so this is a long way of saying that's been a controversial rule because it was brought in after contracts that were legal at the time were signed. Vancouver got hit with a cap recapture penalty when Roberto Luongo retired recently. And it sounds like the league is not going to enforce the fact that there could be a credit in the Keith situation were he to retire. Now, where this is not really a controversial thing is I don't expect Duncan Keith to retire. So we're dealing in the hypothetical here. I think this is a guy that still has money left to be made on his contract, still wants to keep playing as long as he can. And so I think a little bit this point is moot, but I give Puckpedia credit for, recognizing that basically by the structure of the contract Keith has, that if he were to retire, it could have a huge positive cap benefit to the Oilers. But as I say, I don't expect him to retire anyway. And it doesn't sound like the NHL is inclined to enforce the rule the way it was written. And that's been a rule, again, that's been quite gray. And so I hope I haven't put you to sleep if you're not into the minutia of the way the CBA works. But, I think the league will be happy when all of those pre-2013 long-term deals are completely gone because that recapture penalty is been a bit of a lightning rod in various situations.
$5.5 million cap hit that expires after the end of next season for Duncan Keith. So we'll see how that goes. Very last thing I want to mention before we get to Ask CJ. Last episode, we tried to, track what was going on with regards to the sexual assault settlement with Canadian Hockey League junior players and a woman who says she was sexually assaulted by them. Rick Westhead has been reporting a lot on this. Katie Strang for The Athletic has also been doing this. The latest update with that is that a standing committee on Canadian heritage is calling for members of Hockey Canada to testify at a hearing over this settlement. And it looks as if the hearing will be available to be viewed by the public via television and stream next week. A lot of people have been calling for this. We know about the fact that the Canadian government is calling for a financial audit of Hockey Canada as well. I know we'll probably get more updates with regards to what will be said next week. But I'm intrigued at the fact that this is, again, a story that continues to develop and is something that not only is it something where we're going to hear people from Hockey Canada, go to the stand and speak their piece, but it's something that's going to be available for public consumption. That is the part of this that, again, is kind of just, buzzing in my mind, that this is something that the powers around Hockey Canada seem to take very seriously. And not to mention the fact that the National Hockey League says that they are investigating the situation.
Right. I don't have anything more on where things stand with the NHL at this point, but I have spoken to a few people, pretty sharp people in the sport, that have just noted that, this is a pretty serious thing that Hockey Canada is now going to have to answer for publicly. I mean, you get called to the government chambers to discuss it. It's, there's a tremendous amount of heat on them as an organization in terms of how they responded to this, how they handled it, some question about whether it should be something that even, should be settled out of court with an NDA. And so I think that the best bow we can put on it at this point is we certainly haven't heard the last of this story. I don't know if we'll ever learn the identities of John Does 1 through 8. I don't know if those players, if they're in the NHL, will face any subsequent kind of punishment from the league over time here. But certainly as an organization, Hockey Canada is being put under the radar to address, how they dealt with all this in the last 3 or 4 years, from the night it happened in London till where we are now. And it's not going to go quietly. And so, we'll just keep following along as it goes, read the great work of my colleague Rick Westhead, Katie, and see what happens with the government next week.
Absolutely. We'll be keeping tabs on that as well as other NHL news and notes. And with that, we've gone through the gamut of those news and notes. So with that, it's time. I understand it might be a bit of a tough transition here, but it's time for us to get to questions from you all on social media, off Twitter or off of Discord, in a segment we'd like to call Ask CJ. We're going to take in some questions and then wrap this baby up. Siege, this first one here comes from Spencer on Radio on Twitter. Could a team legally trade a guy, have the other team buy them out, and sign them as a free agent? For example, could Toronto give Arizona a first rounder to take Jake Muzzin with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge that they then buy out Jake Muzzin, making him a UFA that could go back and sign with Toronto? That seems like a really interesting, convoluted plan.
Yes. And my understanding of the rule is, and I don't have the CBA in front of me, is that anyone that you've traded within the last 12 months that gets bought out can't re-sign with you for 12 months. So it's a way around having this kind of loophole closed. So if it was the case of Muzzin and the Leafs traded him to Arizona bought him out, Jake Muzzin couldn't re-sign with Toronto or Arizona for a 12-month period. So that's not something that can be done in the same offseason. But I guess if you want to play the really long game and bring them back a year down the road, but I think that's too many, variables, because then Jake Muzzin could be a free agent this summer and sign somewhere else, or any other player. I don't mean to make this about Jake being bought out. So, basically the answer is no, a team can't do that. And it's because the league wants to close off as many ways as possible where you're getting around the cap.
This next one from BJude95 on Twitter. CJ, any opinions on donuts being a breakfast food? I'm a firm believer the donut is a breakfast pastry, but I've been told by close friends and family that I'm flat out wrong. Would love your thoughts on this. Cheers.
Must confess, I do not eat breakfast. So I don't have strong feelings on what is or isn't a breakfast food. But, I think you should live your best life. If you want to have a donut in the morning, get after it, but make sure you get some workouts in to counterbalance those decisions.
Probably a good idea. This next one from Vista Radio Casey. Will the Sens be in on any big free agents?
Depends how you define big. Like they're not going to be hunting for Johnny Gaudreau or Chris Letang, I don't believe. It's the sort of biggest names that are hitting the market. What Casey's probably pointing at is Claude Giroux, because I know there's been a lot of speculation about, whether Claude might come back to Ottawa. He's got a lot of ties there, spends time there in the offseason. And, I don't know that it can be completely ruled out, but at this point, it seems as though Giroux's number one destination would be to stay in Florida. Now, the Panthers have some cap challenges this summer, and they're going to have to make some decisions. And, it may be, while they did like the fit with Giroux, that they're not able to extend him. And then we'll see if the Sens dive in there. But, Ottawa does have some money. I believe that they have an ability or a desire to spend closer to the cap than they have in the past. And, they want to take the next step. They want to take it this season. We remember Pierre Dorion saying that basically wanted them to be a playoff team this past year. They weren't really close. They were never really in that race, but I think there's some pressure to try to get them there next year. And so I would think that they'll be in the market for free agents. I just don't know if it'll be a quote unquote big name that they end up signing.
Next one from Colin Basher. Any thoughts on if San Jose keeps Bob Boughner? They've been searching for a new GM and they haven't seemed well coached. So maybe the new GM gets to hire a coach he wants. My understanding is that they will keep Boughner, that he's safe for the time being. But, anytime you get a new boss in these kind of situations, over time, things could change. And so I would expect him to be behind the bench and running training camp in September and October. And then you go from there and see what kind of relationship he'll strike up with the new GM. And there's been times it's worked too. Like, let's not forget that, yes, at times you sort of say, okay, GM gets to hire his own coach, but, someone like Mike Sullivan has played under several GMs in Pittsburgh. John Cooper was in Tampa when Julian Brisebois ascended to the throne, if you want to say that, and Brisebois has been loyal to him even after they got swept out of the playoffs in 2019. And so I wouldn't presuppose that Bob Boughner won't survive under this new GM, because there's lots of examples, if you look over history, where it happens that a GM will inherit a coach and it'll be a fine working relationship. But, we won't know that until we know who the new GM is. I know the Sharks are narrowing in on their process and getting closer to naming that person. And so we'll have a little bit more understanding, I think, when we find out who they hire and what that person has to say about the coaching staff's future. A few more are left to go here. From B Griffin 95, who is more likely to be moved? David Pastrnak or Alex DeBrincat? I'd
say Alex DeBrincat. I actually believe there's a world where Pastrnak resigns in Boston. I know we dug in deep on the Bruins last week in our shows, and I don't really have a lot of new, fresh info on that situation since we talked then. But I think Pastrnak really likes Boston. I think there's a good relationship between him and the team and the GM and the agent and all that stuff. And they're going to sit down in July and see what kind of contract they can come up and see if he can be extended. I think that the situation is a little different with DeBrincat. I mean, Chicago, much like the Ducks with Gibson, I mean, they've got a new GM. We've already seen that GM, trade away a guy like Brandon Hagel, just 23 years old, because the return was that good. And I think if they can get a strong enough return for DeBrincat, they'll pull the trigger on that deal, because look, he's 1 year away from having a big qualifying offer owed to him. And then he's 1 year beyond that from potentially being an unrestricted free agent. And so, it's not clear what the future is for DeBrincat, what he's going to be paid, if he's going to want to himself stay in Chicago long-term. And so I think preemptively, it makes sense to gauge the market on a player like that and see, what you might find. And so I think DeBrincat is the more likely the two to be moved. There's a world where Pasternak's moved, of course, if he doesn't want to sign an extension this summer in Boston, or they can't find agreement on terms. But at this point in time, I don't think those conversations are happening, whereas teams are open to call the Blackhawks and at least have a discussion about what it might cost to get DeBrincat.
Two final ones here, and they're both from Discord. This one from Dexter. Your discussion about adding postseason awards a few weeks ago got me thinking, should we put more emphasis on the playoff points leader? Should there be a separate award for it? Should it mean more for potential Hall of Fame resumes?
I would count that. Why not? you have to be a great player on a great team generally to win the playoff scoring race. Over time, though, there's been sort of less heralded players. I remember David Krejci one year led it for Boston. I think it might have actually been 2 different years he's led it. This year we might actually have Connor McDavid finish as the points leader, even despite getting swept in the 3rd round and not getting a chance to play in the 4th round. But, I think it should count. I mean, there's always an awkward dynamic with the NHL when we talk about how many games a player has played, how many goals he scored or points, because we tend to disregard their playoff point totals entirely in those discussions. And to me, they should count for something. I realize it's not always a player's fault when he's not on a good enough team to play a bunch of playoff games to add there. But, the flip side of that is Nikita Kucherov basically getting an extra 30 points every playoffs, should count toward a standing. Now, of course, Kucherov, he's a Hall of Famer already anyway, but I'm open to that. I think the playoffs should be counted for something. It is a separate tournament. It's a separate sort of set of circumstances, but it's pretty important time of year. And we should recognize the players that step up and perform in those moments.
Last one from SDPN_Habs fan. Maybe this person will be someone we'll see at the SDPN Fan Appreciation Night on July 8th in Montreal. Well, we're going to be there. So maybe we'll see you there. SDPN_Habs fan. With rumors of New Jersey potentially shipping their 2nd overall pick, who would they most likely try to acquire in exchange?
Oh, tough one. Look, the Devils, they're kind of been hanging around trying to take a next step for a while. They have some nice young players. I know Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes have each had some injury issues the last few years, but when they've been healthy and on the ice, the results are there. And so if you're trading a 2nd overall pick or really anywhere in the top 10, you're trying to bring in established help. And so, I can't give you the name. I can't give you the hot rumor because I haven't heard who they're going to trade that for. But, in a draft like this one, I think it's more likely we see some of the top picks move just because there's not really consensus at the top in terms of who the absolute best prospects are. I mean, you might order it in a couple different ways between Wright and Cooley. And I got to learn how to properly say that the Slovak player's name, but
Slavkovsky.
I don't want exactly. I just don't want to butcher it. That's not why I'm avoiding it. But teams might have those players completely 1, 2, or 3, depending on your draft list and what your scouts think. And so when you have that sort of year, the conditions are there to have a trade, and maybe we'll get some fireworks on the trade front on the draft floor on July 7th. I'd gladly take that because I think it adds a little bit of spice and drama to those evenings.
Man, I can't wait for that draft week. You already heard me mention it, the Fan Appreciation Night on the 8th, but of course the NHL draft on the 7th in Montreal. It promises to be a very busy and entertaining time in the world of hockey. And you and I will be there, and the SDPN will be there. Everybody's coming into Montreal. It's going to be lit.
Love it. It's going to be fun, man. I don't know all the details. I know I'm going to be there. I got to find a good craft beer selection, and hopefully we can have a relaxing time with our fans because you guys make the show go.
Exactly, man. Looking forward to seeing everyone at La Cage, which shout out to La Cage being remodeled from Casual Spa and being this super sexy place now. Anyway, whatever. Shout out to everyone listening and watching this episode. We appreciate y'all. Tune in on Thursday for a brand spanking new episode of our fine show. Subscribe to the SDPN YouTube page. Subscribe to the SDPN Discord. We will have stick taps on Thursday and other fun stuff. And we'll have analysis of game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final by then because it will have already happened on the Wednesday night. For CJ, I'm Julian. So long and enjoy this year's Stanley Cup Final.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.